Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another week of Cornerstone Student Ministries live, and we are coming at you today with a brand new series talking about friendship.
Yeah, guys, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of dive right into this, and just so you guys get a kind of an idea, we're going to go for the next 3 or 4 weeks talking about just what it looks like to choose your friends and have these Christian relationships, and then also some of the highs and lows that come along with that, and just kind of like discerning what that's going to look like for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, choosing friends, this is an important topic. Obviously, this is something that is applicable to all of us because we all have friends. We want to be friends with people. We want to have friends. As much as somebody might like being a loner and take pride in being a loner, we need relationships. And these friendships, these relationships are going to be something that influences our lives and kind of characterizes who we are as people.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as we kind of dive into that, I want you guys to just think, I know either on your couch, in your bed, wherever you're hanging out right now watching us, think about who your best friends are in the entire world. And just kind of like think about who they are and just, why you're friends with them. I know me personally, some of my best friends in the world are some guys that I graduated from Citadel with. And these guys that I went through, be involved, knobs, and if you understand Citadel, you get a better idea of that. But these are guys that I went through some of the hardest times of my life with, and then also like my football teammates. Yeah. These are guys that I've picked out over the last couple of years that they're gonna be my friends forever.
Yeah. Same with me. Some of my best friends were people that I grew up with my whole life. I remember I had a friend starting in second grade, probably up until I think it was ninth grade. I spent the night at his house like every weekend. It wasn't so much a matter of if I'm coming over, just kind of what time are you going to be here. I was there all the time. And then through high school, we played football and everything together. And then I went off to college and kind of got just another close circle of friends, a couple guys I was in the Army with. So the more you do life with people, the more you go through, the closer you get in those relationships.
Absolutely. And I think, so this is kind of a jokey saying, I don't know if you've heard it before, but it says you can pick your friends and you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose. And I say that jokingly because, obviously you're not going to go pick your friend's nose, but you are going to be able to pick your friends.
Yeah.
And the way that we do that and the way that we go about that is really important. And we have a couple big ideas and then some examples of what this looks like that Jesus has provided us with. So starting off, who you surround yourself is super, super important.
Yeah.
Jesus really understood this, and we're going to kind of see how he interacted with his disciples, his 12 closest friends. And then as he walked with them more, the disciples are going to learn this as well.
Yeah, so you kind of become who you surround yourself with. You become who you associate yourself with. As Jesus picked his disciples, we see as the disciples, they have a lot of growing pains, really even until after his resurrection. But we do see growth that as they were spending time with Jesus, they were becoming more conformed to the image of Jesus. And I've heard it said before that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So think about the 5 people in your life that you spend more time with than anyone else, and you're the average of that group of people.
Yeah, that's so good. That's such a good phrase. So the question is, how do we go about picking who these people are going to be? Jesus, actually, we get to see in Luke chapter 6 and verses 12 to 16, it kind of explains just the instance leading up to how he picked his disciples. So starting in Luke 6, it says, in these days he went out to the mountain to pray, and all night he continued in prayer to God. And when day came, he called his disciples and chose from them 12 who he named apostles. Simon, who he named Peter, Andrew, his brother, and James and John, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, the son of Alphaeus, and Simon, who was called a zealot, and Judas, the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, I don't know how to say that one exactly, who became the traitor, but we'll talk about that a little later on. But we can see here, guys, how Jesus, in the midst of selecting his 12 closest friends, really spent an entire night in prayer deciding who these people were going to be. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you. I don't know the last time I spent an entire night in prayer ever. Yeah. I know for me personally, if you pray for about 10-15 minutes, you've already prayed for everything twice, and then you're starting to get kind of sleepy too.
I think Pastor Bill mentioned that a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
Same thing.
But yes, this is something to take very, very seriously, because the people you surround yourself with, like we said, is what you're going to end up becoming. Mm-hmm. Jesus obviously was not going to be influenced too much by his disciples, but his disciples would definitely be influenced by him.
Yeah, and here's another thing too about interesting is Jesus, he knew his disciples. He knew what was going to happen. Don't forget, Jesus was fully man, but fully God. He knew Judas was going to betray him, yet he still picked Judas. Like, Jesus picked him for a reason. He was going to fulfill a purpose, which I think one very small lesson that you can pull from that is that all your friends aren't going to be perfect. None of the disciples were perfect, and some of your friends aren't always going to treat you the best. But there's an element of forgiveness in these relationships when we pick these people who are going to be close to us in our lives. And we need to understand that there's a difference between just associating with people and being in close community with people. The people who we have close community with, these are those people that are going to see kind of our behind the scenes. I think you may have heard me say this before, that we can kind of fall into a trap of comparison when we scroll through social media and we see everybody else's posts and see how great their life is, because then we start thinking about our life. And what we're doing is we're comparing our behind the scenes to their highlight reel. And what's happening is when we are in community with a close group of people, we're allowing them to see our behind the scenes. We're not just putting our highlight reel out there on Instagram for them to see, for other people to kind of like what we're going through and like the things that we're able to experience. But the people that we bring into close community and relationship with us, they see our behind the scenes, and we bring certain people in. Not everybody needs access to your life. Jesus, he had hundreds of disciples. People followed him in crowds. Yet he had this group of 12 that he brought in close. And then within that group of 12, you look, Jesus had 3 that were his inner circle, closer than the rest. He had Peter, James, and John. He brought them with him into times of prayer. He pulled them away from the rest of the 12 in order to pour into them very specifically. So having a close group of people, close group of friends that you are going to have a tight relationship with, it doesn't mean you're excluding everyone else, but everyone else doesn't need to have the same amount of access to you that those closest to you do.
Absolutely. And then there's some things that we can kind of take from these relationships that Jesus had with his disciples as well. And one of those is that though Jesus was completely and fully sufficient in himself, like we said, he's 100% man, he's 100% God, so he doesn't need anything. He doesn't need anyone. He could have accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish on this earth by himself, but he chose to bring these people into relationship with him. So it's not so much in a relationship all the time what these people can do for you. Sometimes it's what you can do for them.
Yeah.
And we can kind of see this too as we go into Mark chapter 1 and verse 17. It's when Jesus first met his disciples, and he saw them and he was thinking about what he could do to pour into these people. And then when he met Simon and Andrew, so Peter and Andrew, he called out to them, and Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." So he was immediately thinking about what he could pour into them to build them up, and so they could then in turn build others up as well.
Yeah, let me think. Have you ever been around somebody that you just, like, when you think about that person, you just enjoy being around them? Like, there's just something about that person, that their personality, their lifestyle, like their attitude, everything about them is just like, I like to be around that person. Just a few days ago, Amy and I, we were driving across, and we passed this street, and I have a friend that lives on this one street that we passed, and I was like, man, I haven't seen him in a couple weeks. I was like, I need to call him. So it was actually, I texted him, and then 3 days later, I was over at his house, because it was like, I just like to be around that person. And the people that you're around, they're going to influence you. You can also influence people. It's a two-way street. So we want to surround ourselves with people that we can be a positive influence on, but are also going to be a positive influence on us. Now, as Christians, there's a delicate balance in this, because we want to be able to witness to people. We want to be able to show people the love of Jesus. We want to be intentional about being around people who don't know Jesus, while also not allowing the influence that they have from the world to kind of influence our walk and be negative in our impact and our relationship with Jesus. We don't want to allow that to happen. I've heard it said before that to everybody in your life, you are either a stepping stone or a stumbling block. We want to be stepping stones to people. We want to lift each other up. We want to surround ourselves with people that are going to lift us up, and we don't want to be surrounded by a bunch of stumbling blocks. Mark 18, he says this. He says, immediately they left their nets and they followed him. What this is showing is that these disciples, they were influenced by Jesus immediately. They saw something in Jesus that was going to affect them positively. They were called by Jesus. Jesus chose them. He elected them to follow him and understanding the influence that Jesus was going to have on their life, they dropped what they were doing so they could go and spend time with him. They knew they wanted to be with Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then, this influence obviously impacted their lives for the better as they were able to walk with Jesus for the next 3 years of their life and really get to grow not only in their personally, but also in this community, and then even beyond that as they made more connections and more believers as they spread the word of Jesus throughout the nations.
Absolutely.
So these relationships, like we're saying, if you build them positively and they have a Christ-centered foundation, they have the ability to multiply and to touch more lives than we could ever imagine. Mm-hmm. So as we kind of look at how Jesus reached out to disciples and how the disciples responded, there's a couple ways I think that we can apply this to kind of our daily walk and how we go about making our relationships and things like that. So first, as what we saw in Luke chapter 6, prayerful discernment is essential to deciding who your people are going to be, who your friends are going to be. If Jesus had to spend the entire night praying before he determined who these 12 people that he was going to spend the next 3 years and then eventually all eternity with, imagine how much more we need to pray about who we're going to associate ourselves with and who we're going to be in community with.
Yeah. And then another one is we need to be willing to invest into people without thinking that we're going to get something back out of it. Mm-hmm. And think about what did Jesus need from the disciples? He didn't need anything. As Gage already said, he was totally sufficient in and of himself. He could accomplish whatever he wanted. God doesn't need anything from us. But God was selfless in his sacrifice for us, and Jesus was selfless in his influence and his development of the disciples and who they had become. So we too should be selfless as we enter relationships in discipleship and trying to positively influence people and not just cut people off because it's not being reciprocated, but that we should be following the example of Jesus in being willing to pour into people without thinking that we are deserving to have that back for some reason.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And then finally, I think in our relationships, we should also seek to find ways to serve those who are in our community, and those who are in our inner circles, and those who we associate with on a daily basis. I have here written, true Christian friendship is an overflow of Christ's love from our own hearts that spills out of us to build up those around us. And this is just, as I was kind of reflecting on this, there are some good people that we know that may not be believers, but there's something different you can tell about those who genuinely love Christ and are in relationship with him because it's reflected in their relationships with others. And I think that in our own lives, as we continue to grow closer to Christ and then his love continually fills our hearts are then going to overflow that love to those that are in community.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So guys, that's kind of our first installment that we have this week for friendship. We're going to carry this on. We're going to talk a little bit about some conflicts and things like that next week, and maybe who we maybe should and shouldn't associate with in the midst of these friendships. But this has been week 1.
Yeah, so we got a few more weeks of friends, and again, this is something that's important for us to know because we all have friends. We want to be friends. There's actually, if you know Mr. Ken Burgess, I heard him tell me a few weeks ago, he was talking to, I think it was his son, and he said, he reminds him that if you want to have friends, you need to be a friend. Mm-hmm. So guys, pray that you take this series to heart over the next few weeks as we talk about friendship, the importance of friendship, and the importance of surrounding yourself with people and the influence that you can have on them and they can have on you.
Definitely. All right. Thanks for joining us this week, guys, and we will see you again soon.
Appreciate it. See you guys.